General Thrax stood on the command deck of the warship Crimson Talon, his forearms crossed in a pose of absolute dominance. Behind him, holographic displays showed the complete subjugation of Thendorian Empire. Another star system, another victory. 47 conquests in 12 solar cycles. The Kralix Dominion was, without question, the most feared military force in 3 galactic sectors. "Status report," Thrax barked, his voice carrying the gravelly authority of someone who had personally led over 200 planetary invasions. Colonel Vrynn, his second-in-command, snapped to attention. "Supreme War Commander, the Andorian surrender is complete. Their planetary defense grid has been dismantled. Their military leadership has accepted our terms. They have agreed to pay tribute for the next 50 cycles." Thrax allowed himself a rare smile. His species had evolved on a brutal world where only the strongest survived. They had clawed their way from subsistence hunters to galaxy-spanning conquerors through sheer determination, tactical genius, and weaponry that could crack planets. The Kralix military doctrine was simple: overwhelming force, precision strikes, and absolutely zero mercy for those who resisted. "Excellent," Thrax said, turning to address his bridge crew. "Let this be a message to all who would oppose the Kralix Dominion. We are inevitable. We are unstoppable. We are the apex predators of this galaxy." The crew erupted in a battle cry that had echoed across 47 conquered worlds. It was a sound that struck terror into the hearts of species 10 times their size. Because size, as the Kralix had proven time and again, meant nothing compared to superior technology, tactics, and the raw warrior spirit that burned in every Kralix soul. Scout Captain Zell approached with a datapad. "General, our long-range reconnaissance has identified a promising new target. Designation: Sol 3. The natives call it Earth. Intelligence suggests a developing civilization with primitive nuclear capability, but no unified planetary defense. No force fields. No plasma weapons. No interstellar fleet." Thrax's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "Another easy conquest for the glory of the Dominion." "Perhaps," Zell said carefully. "However, preliminary scans indicate the planet is densely populated. Over 7 billion life forms. They appear to be the dominant species, though our sensors detect numerous other large organisms as well." "Numbers mean nothing without discipline," Thrax replied dismissively. "The Yorthian Collective had 12 billion soldiers. They fell in 6 planetary rotations. Quantity cannot defeat quality, Captain. This is a fundamental law of warfare." Vrynn pulled up holographic images of Earth, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked peaceful, soft, completely unprepared for what was coming. "Their computational technology is shockingly primitive," Vrynn noted with barely concealed contempt. "Silicon-based processors. Binary code. They still use physical buttons to interface with their machines. Our tactical systems could overwhelm their entire internet infrastructure in approximately 4.7 seconds. Thrax studied the rotating hologram of Earth. Somewhere down there, billions of beings were going about their lives, completely unaware that their world had just been marked for conquest. It was almost poetic, almost sad. But the Kralix had not become the galaxy's apex predators by indulging in sentiment. "Prepare the fleet," Thrax commanded. "We launch for Sol 3 within the cycle. This Earth will learn what countless worlds before them have learned. When the Kralix Dominion arrives, resistance is not just futile, it is fatal." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each warrior at their station, each one a veteran of dozens of campaigns. They had defeated enemies with superior numbers, better resources, and home field advantage. They had won battles that military strategists said were impossible. They had carved the name Kralix into the fabric of galactic history with blade and blood and unbreakable will. Earth would be conquest number 48, another jewel in the crown of the Dominion. Another species that would tell stories to their children about the day the Kralix came and how resistance proved meaningless against such perfect warriors. As the Crimson Talon began plotting its jump to the Sol system, not one member of the crew suspected that they were about to encounter something far more terrifying than any weapon, any army, or any defense system in the known galaxy. They were about to meet a Toddler. The jump to the Sol system took 3 planetary rotations. The Kralix fleet emerged from hyperspace just beyond the orbit of Mars, their 12 warships arranged in perfect attack formation. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons, shield disruptors, and enough firepower to level a medium-sized city. Or what would be a medium-sized city to species who measured things in miles instead of inches. Colonel Vrynn stood beside General Thrax, analyzing the tactical displays with the cold precision of a career military strategist. Initial scans confirm our intelligence, Supreme War Commander. No orbital defense platforms, no energy shields protecting population centers. Their most advanced aircraft still rely on combustion engines and primitive aerodynamics. This will be the easiest conquest in Dominion history. Thrax nodded, though something nagged at the back of his tactical mind. 47 conquests had taught him that easy victories often hid unexpected complications. What about their communications infrastructure? Can they coordinate a planetary response? Doubtful, Vrynn replied, pulling up data streams. They have something called the Internet, but it is primarily used for sharing images of small quadrupeds and arguing about trivial matters. Their military communications are fragmented across multiple nation-states. They have no unified command structure, no single planetary government. They are divided, leaderless, and completely vulnerable. Scout Captain Zell entered the command deck with fresh reconnaissance data. General, I have identified an optimal landing site for our initial strike force. Coordinates indicate a region called Ohio. Suburban sector, low military presence. The dwelling structures are spaced far apart, which provides excellent cover for establishing our forward base. I detect minimal security systems, just basic visual sensors and auditory alarms. Nothing our jamming technology cannot handle. Thrax studied the holographic display showing an aerial view of a residential neighborhood. Neat rows of houses with manicured lawns, primitive ground vehicles in driveways, no weapon emplacements, no fortifications, no signs of any defensive capability whatsoever. The natives call these structures homes, Zell continued. Intelligence suggests they house small family units, typically 2 to 4 adult organisms with sometimes 1 to 3 juvenile organisms. The structure I have selected appears to have minimal adult supervision during certain time periods, perfect for infiltration. Excellent work, Captain, Thrax said. You will lead the first strike team, 12 warriors, full tactical gear. Establish a beachhead in this dwelling structure and begin intelligence gathering on the native population. Once we understand their response capabilities, we will expand operations to the entire planetary surface. Zell saluted with all 4 arms. It will be my honor, Supreme War Commander. The natives will not even detect our presence until it is far too late. Vrynn pulled up biological scans of the area. I am detecting 1 adult female organism, 1 adult male organism, and 1 juvenile organism. The juvenile appears to be in an early developmental stage, minimal threat assessment. The adults spend significant portions of their day away from the dwelling structure, leaving the juvenile with a hired caretaker. Our window of opportunity is substantial. What about planetary defense response time? Thrax asked. If they detect our presence, how quickly can they mobilize? Their fastest military response units would take approximately 18 minutes to reach this location, Vrynn calculated. More than enough time for our forces to evacuate if necessary. However, I anticipate no detection whatsoever. Our ships operate on frequencies their sensors cannot register. Our personal cloaking fields are effective against their visual spectrum. We are, for all intents and purposes, invisible to them. Thrax allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would indeed be the easiest conquest in Dominion history. A divided planet, primitive technology, no unified defense. It was almost disappointing how simple this would be. Deploy the strike team, Thrax commanded. Captain Zell, you have operational authority. Establish the forward base, gather intelligence, and prepare for Phase 2 occupation. Show these humans what it means to face the Kralix Dominion. Zell saluted again and strode toward the deployment bay where his hand-picked team of elite warriors waited. Veterans all. They had fought on frozen worlds and molten hellscapes. They had breached fortresses and toppled empires. One suburban dwelling with 3 unsuspecting natives would be nothing more than a routine training exercise. The strike team boarded their insertion craft, weapons checked, armor sealed, confidence absolute. The ship detached from the Crimson Talon and began its descent toward Earth, toward Ohio, toward the Johnson family residence at 4257 Maple Grove Drive, toward 3-year-old Emma Johnson's backyard. As the craft entered Earth's atmosphere, not one Kralix warrior suspected that they were about to encounter the most terrifying force in the universe, a toddler who had just learned the word mine and applied it to literally everything she could see, touch, or pick up. The invasion of Earth had begun. It would last approximately 14 minutes before descending into complete and total chaos. Captain Zell's insertion craft touched down in the Johnson family backyard at precisely 1437 local time, settling between a plastic sandbox and what appeared to be some sort of primitive water distribution system the natives called a sprinkler. The landing was textbook perfect. Silent. Undetected. Exactly as planned. "Strike team, deploy," Zell commanded through his comm unit. 12 Kralix warriors emerged from the craft in full tactical formation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The backyard stretched before them like an enormous alien landscape. Blades of grass towered overhead like massive trees. A garden gnome loomed in the distance like some kind of disturbing religious monument. "Perimeter secure," reported Lieutenant Karn, the team's weapons specialist. "No hostiles detected. No sensor readings indicating awareness of our presence. We are clear to establish the forward operating base." Zell nodded with satisfaction. "Begin reconnaissance. I want full tactical assessment of this dwelling structure within the hour. Vex, set up communications relay. Vrynn, establish defensive." The ground shook. It was not an earthquake. It was something worse. Something that registered on their seismic sensors as a rhythmic impact pattern. Footsteps. Massive, earth-shaking footsteps. "Contact!" Lieutenant Karn shouted. "Unknown entity approaching from bearing 270. Mass readings are off the scale. It is enormous. Repeat, it is—" The shadow fell over them like nightfall arriving 6 hours early. Zell looked up and his 4 hearts stopped beating in perfect synchronized terror. Towering above them, blocking out the sun itself, was a creature beyond comprehension. It stood upright on 2 legs. It had 2 arms, each capable of crushing their entire strike team. Its face was round, with 2 forward-facing eyes that marked it as a predator species, and it was looking directly at them. Emma Johnson had just toddled into the backyard after her afternoon snack of apple slices and goldfish crackers. She was wearing her favorite purple dress with the sparkly unicorn on it. Her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails that had already started falling apart. She was 3 years old, which meant she was at the absolute peak of human chaos potential. And she had just spotted something shiny in the grass. "Pretty," Emma announced to no one in particular, which was how she announced most things. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zell screamed into his comm. "All units scatter! Code extinction! Repeat! Code extinction!" The Kralix warriors scattered like drops of water hitting a hot pan. Their training kicked in immediately. 47 conquered worlds had taught them how to survive impossible situations. They had fought enemies with superior firepower, better armor, and tactical advantages. But they had never fought a god, because that was what this creature was. It had to be. Nothing natural could be this large, this powerful, this utterly terrifying. Emma's hand descended from the sky like the judgment of an angry universe. Her pudgy fingers, each one larger than the entire Kralix insertion craft, reached toward the shiny objects scattered across her lawn. "Open fire," Zell commanded, because even in the face of absolute annihilation, Kralix warriors did not surrender. Plasma bolts lanced upward, striking Emma's palm with the combined firepower of 12 military-grade weapons. Emma did not notice. The plasma that could melt through 6 inches of reinforced hull plating felt like tiny tingles against her skin. Like when she touched the fuzzy blanket too fast. "Weapons ineffective," Karn reported, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "Supreme War Commander, the entity is completely immune to our firepower. It is not even reacting to direct hits. What are we fighting?" General Thrax's voice crackled through the comm from orbit, already analyzing the tactical feeds. "Those are not combat readings. That is not armor or shielding. That is natural skin density. Captain Zell, exactly how large is this organism?" Zell was too busy trying not to get crushed to respond. Emma's fingers closed around the Crimson Talon, the flagship of the Kralix Forward Strike Force, the vessel that had led the charge on 47 worlds. She lifted it into the air with the casual ease of someone picking up a shiny pebble. "Ooh, shiny bug," Emma cooed, bringing the ship closer to her face for inspection. Inside the Crimson Talon, warriors who had faced down armies without flinching were now screaming. The entire vessel tilted at a nauseating angle as Emma turned it over in her palm, examining it from different angles. Through the viewports, they could see her enormous eye, blue and curious and completely oblivious to the terror she was causing. "This is Scout Captain Zell to Orbital Command," Zell managed to gasp out, clutching a support beam as the ship rotated again. "The native lifeforms are not what we thought. Repeat, the native lifeforms are not what we thought. They are massive. They are powerful. And we are— Emma's other hand descended and scooped up 6 more warriors who had been attempting a tactical retreat toward the sandbox. She held them up to the light, watching them squirm in her palm. "More shiny bugs," she declared happily. "Mommy, I found pretty bugs." Colonel Vryn's voice came through the comm, tight with dawning horror. "Captain Zell, our orbital scans are being recalibrated. The biological entities we classified as the dominant species are registering at an average height of 5.7 feet. This means, calculating comparative scale, that your strike team is approximately 3.2 inches tall," Zell finished, his voice hollow. "We are 3.2 inches tall. We conquered 47 star systems. We defeated the Yorthian Collective. We brought the Andorian Empire to its knees. And we are 3.2 inches tall." Emma smiled at her new treasures and began walking back toward the house, cupping the Kralix strike team in her hands like precious jewels. "Mommy's gonna love my new toys," she said. In orbit, General Thrax stared at his tactical display in absolute silence. For the first time in his military career, he had no orders to give, no strategy to deploy, no tactical solution to implement. They had just been picked up by a toddler, and somehow that was infinitely more terrifying than any weapon, any army, or any defense system they had ever encountered. The conquest of Earth was not going according to plan. Emma kicked open the door to her playroom with the practiced ease of someone who had been told 100 times not to kick doors but absolutely would continue kicking doors because kicking doors was fun. She was still clutching her shiny bugs in both hands, careful not to squeeze too hard because Mommy said she squeezed the goldfish too hard once and it went to live on a farm. "You guys live here now," Emma announced, which was how real estate transactions worked when you were 3. She deposited the Kralix strike team onto the floor of her dollhouse, a 3-story pink monstrosity with plastic furniture and approximately 7,000 tiny accessories that Emma's parents regularly stepped on at 3 in the morning. To the Kralix, it looked like some sort of bizarre architectural nightmare designed by someone who had never actually seen a building before. Captain Zell picked himself up from where he had landed on a miniature plastic couch. Around him, his strike team was regaining their bearings, checking for injuries, trying to process what had just happened to them. Through the dollhouse windows, they could see the rest of Emma's playroom. A mountain of stuffed animals in one corner, a bin overflowing with blocks, and what appeared to be some kind of colorful modeling compound that their sensors could not identify. "Status report," Zell said, because even in the face of cosmic absurdity, military protocol mattered. "All warriors accounted for," Lieutenant Karn reported. "Minor injuries only. Vrynn has a sprained arm. Vex landed on something soft and appears to be stuck to it, but we are combat capable." "Define combat capable," muttered Sergeant Vrynn, who was trying to free his leg from a tiny plastic teacup. "What exactly are we supposed to fight? The giant deity child?" "Tactical repositioning," Zell said firmly, because calling it tactical repositioning sounded better than admitting they had been kidnapped by a toddler. "We establish a defensive perimeter, contact orbital command, and coordinate an extraction." General Thrax's voice came through the comm, remarkably calm for someone whose elite strike force had just been turned into living toys. "Captain Zell, orbital sensors indicate you have been relocated to an interior structure. What is your situation?" "We are in some kind of residential chamber, Supreme War Commander," Zell reported, watching as Emma dumped a handful of plastic dinosaurs into the dollhouse. A purple T-Rex landed next to him with a hollow thunk. "The juvenile organism has placed us in what appears to be a recreational facility. We are attempting to establish—" "Tea party!" Emma shouted with the enthusiasm of someone announcing a declaration of war. What followed was the single most surreal experience in Kralix military history. Emma produced a plastic tea set from somewhere and began arranging it around the dollhouse. Warriors who had stormed fortified bunkers now found themselves being seated at a tiny table. The Crimson Talon was propped up against a stuffed elephant like a decorative centerpiece. "This is unacceptable," Colonel Vrynn said through the comm. "We are the Kralix Dominion. We do not attend tea parties." "Tell that to the giant deity child," Zell muttered as Emma placed a plastic cup in front of him that was roughly the size of his torso. Emma poured invisible tea from a plastic teapot, making slurping sounds to demonstrate proper tea-drinking technique. "You have to say thank you," she instructed seriously. "That's what Mommy says. You say thank you for tea." Lieutenant Karn looked at Captain Zell. Captain Zell looked at Lieutenant Karn. They had fought on frozen worlds where the atmosphere itself tried to kill them. This should not be harder than that. Thank you for the tea, Zell said, his warrior pride dying a small, quiet death. Emma beamed. You're welcome! Now you have to drink it. For the next 20 minutes, the Kralik strike team was subjected to what could only be described as aggressive hospitality. Emma made them attend her tea party. She tried to put a hair clip on Sergeant Vrynn, who spent 5 minutes trapped under sparkly butterfly wings before his squadmates could free him. She discovered that Vex had gotten stuck to a glitter sticker and decided he looked so pretty that way, which meant Vex was now permanently bedazzled. Colonel Vrynn, watching the tactical feeds from orbit, was having trouble processing what he was seeing. Captain Zell, maintain operational security. Do not let the organism compromise your... Is that warrior wearing a tiny hat? It is a festive hat, Colonel, Zell said through gritted teeth. The organism insists it is a party. Remove the hat immediately. I have tried, sir. It is attached with some kind of adhesive. I believe the natives call it a sticker. In another corner of the playroom, 3 Kralix warriors had been separated from the main group and were now trapped in what their sensors identified as modeling compound. Play-Doh, Emma called it. They were up to their waists in blue squishy material that their armor could not cut through, could not burn through, and could not plasma blast through without risking structural collapse of their position. This is Corporal Jin to strike team, one of them reported. We are immobilized in some kind of synthetic polymer. It is not organic. It is not mineral-based. I do not know what this substance is, but it smells like artificial fruit, and I hate everything about this situation. Emma smooshed more Play-Doh around them, humming tunelessly. She was building what she called a castle, but what looked more like a lumpy tower with no structural integrity. The Kralix warriors trapped inside were experiencing a very specific kind of claustrophobic horror. Extraction team, prepare for rescue operations, Zell ordered, watching as Emma produced something called crayons and began drawing on paper. She drew what she claimed was the shiny bugs, but looked more like irregular circles with too many legs. It was, objectively, terrible art, but she seemed proud of it. Then the door opened. Emma's mom, Jennifer Johnson, poked her head into the playroom. Sweetie, it is almost nap time. Start cleaning up your toys. No nap, Emma protested with the righteous indignation of someone being asked to commit a war crime. Playing with bugs. Bugs? Jennifer frowned and walked into the room. Emma, honey, we talked about this. No bringing bugs inside. Where are they? She spotted the dollhouse. She spotted the tiny metallic objects scattered around it. She spotted what looked like very small, very detailed action figures, except they appeared to be moving. Emma, where did you get these? Jennifer asked, leaning closer. Captain Zell froze. The entire strike team froze. Through the view screen, General Thrax froze. Jennifer Johnson was looking directly at them with the analytical gaze of a suburban mother who had seen enough mysterious objects in her daughter's possession to be deeply suspicious of anything new. Found them in the yard, Emma said. They are mine now. These look expensive, Jennifer said, reaching down to pick up Captain Zell. Did you take these from someone's house? As Jennifer's fingers closed around him, Zell managed one final transmission to Orbital Command. Supreme War Commander, we have made contact with a second native organism. Request immediate extraction. Repeat, immediate extraction. The situation has escalated beyond... Nap time! Emma shrieked, and everything went sideways. Emma's nap time was sacred. Not because Emma wanted to nap, but because Jennifer Johnson needed 90 minutes of silence, or she would lose what remained of her sanity. Emma was deposited into her bedroom with strict instructions to stay in bed. The door closed. Silence descended over the Johnson household like a blessed miracle. In the playroom, Captain Zell immediately seized the tactical opportunity. All units, this is Strike Team Leader, he transmitted to every Kralix warrior scattered across Emma's collection of chaos. The giant organisms have entered a dormancy cycle. This is our window for extraction. Rally point is the transport pod near the eastern wall. Move now. Maintain radio silence. Execute with extreme prejudice. What Zell called the transport pod was actually Emma's toy box, a large wooden container overflowing with stuffed animals, blocks, and broken crayons. It was positioned near the window, which meant potential access to the outside world. Freedom. Escape. A return to dignity and proper military operations that did not involve tea parties. Lieutenant Karn emerged from behind a stack of board books, followed by 6 warriors who had been trapped under a puzzle. Captain, what about the warriors in the polymer compound? Already moving, reported Corporal Jin through the comm. He and his two squadmates had spent the last 20 minutes carefully extracting themselves from the Play-Doh using microscopic cutting tools and sheer determination. "We are mobile but covered in blue residue. Recommend immediate decontamination once we reach the extraction point." Sergeant Vrynn appeared from inside the dollhouse, still wearing the sparkly butterfly hair clip because nobody had figured out how to remove it without taking part of his helmet with it. "Strike team leader, I have secured 3 of our plasma rifles. The rest appear to have been relocated by the juvenile organism to unknown locations." "Acceptable losses," Zell said. "Priority 1 is personnel extraction. Equipment is secondary. Now move out." The Kralik strike team began their carefully coordinated advance across Emma's playroom floor. They moved in textbook formation, using stuffed animals as cover, advancing from block to book to crayon box. It was a distance of approximately 15 feet. For 3-inch-tall warriors, it might as well have been a mile through hostile territory. They were halfway to the toy box when they heard it. A jingling sound, coming from downstairs, getting closer. "Contact," Karn whispered urgently. "Unknown entity approaching. Acoustic signature indicates..." Mr. Pickles bounded through the playroom door like a golden-furred avalanche of enthusiasm and poor decision-making. He was a 2-year-old golden retriever who had flunked out of obedience school twice and whose life philosophy was that everything in the universe existed to be either played with, eaten, or both. And he had just spotted 12 tiny moving objects on his favorite playroom floor. "Retreat!" Zell screamed, abandoning all pretense of tactical sophistication. "All units fall back!" What followed was less a military operation and more a desperate flight for survival. Mr. Pickles, tail wagging with pure joy, pounced toward the Kralik's warriors like they were the most interesting toys he had encountered since yesterday's tennis ball. Lieutenant Karn dove behind a plastic fire truck as a massive paw slammed down where he had been standing. "Requesting air support. Requesting anything. This creature is impossibly fast." "Negative on air support." General Thrax's voice came through the comm, tight with frustration. "Our orbital craft cannot operate at that scale indoors. You are on your own, Captain." Corporal Jin tried to sprint toward the toy box, but Mr. Pickles' nose intercepted him, sniffing with enough force to send him tumbling backward. "It is trying to eat me!" Jin screamed. "The beast is—" Mr. Pickles licked him. One massive, wet, slobbery lick that covered Corporal Jin from head to toe in dog saliva. He stood there afterward, dripping and traumatized, as Mr. Pickles decided he tasted boring and moved on to the next interesting thing. "Scatter pattern Delta," Zell ordered, which was the military term for run in random directions and hope nobody dies. Sergeant Vrynn made it 3 steps before Mr. Pickles stepped on his foot, not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to pin him completely. Vrynn pulled at his trapped leg, watching in horror as Mr. Pickles leaned down, sniffed him curiously, and then tried to pick him up in his mouth. "Negative! Negative! I repeat, do not ingest!" Vrynn screamed as he was lifted into the air by dog teeth the size of his entire body. He dangled from Mr. Pickles' mouth like a very unfortunate chew toy, trying to activate his plasma rifle with hands that could not reach the firing mechanism. Mr. Pickles trotted across the room, pleased with his new toy, and dropped Vrynn directly into his water bowl. The splash was catastrophic. Vrynn surfaced, sputtering, in what was essentially a small lake of lukewarm dog water with pieces of kibble floating on the surface. "This is Sergeant Vrynn. I am in the water reservoir. Current is strong. I repeat, I am..." Another warrior landed next to him with a splash. Then another. Mr. Pickles, having discovered that dropping the tiny moving things into his water bowl produced entertaining splashing noises, was systematically collecting Kralik's warriors and depositing them into what had become their own personal aquatic disaster. "Abandon ship!" someone yelled, which made no sense because they were not on a ship, but panic had officially replaced tactical thinking. Captain Zell managed to reach the toy box, climbing up the side using a stuffed giraffe as a ladder. From this elevated position, he could see the full scope of the disaster. Half his strike team was in the water bowl. 3 warriors were trapped under Mr. Pickles' paw. 2 had been knocked under the bookshelf. And Corporal Jin was still covered in dog saliva, trying to wipe it off with pieces of Play-Doh, which only made everything worse. "Orbital Command, this is Captain Zell," he reported, his voice defeated. "The extraction attempt has failed. We have encountered a quadrupedal organism of massive size and incomprehensible behavior. It does not appear hostile, but its actions are causing severe operational complications. Requesting new orders." General Thrax was silent for a long moment. In orbit, He stared at the tactical feed showing his elite strike team being systematically defeated by a golden retriever. "Captain Zell," Thrax finally said. "New orders. Survive until we can negotiate an extraction with the native organisms. Do whatever is necessary to maintain personnel safety, even if that means another tea party?" Zell finished. "Even if that means another tea party." From downstairs they heard footsteps, human footsteps, and a voice. "Mr. Pickles, what are you doing up there? Are you bothering Emma's toys again?" Jennifer Johnson was coming back. Captain Zell closed his eyes. They had survived 47 planetary invasions. They had defeated armies and toppled empires. And they were about to be discovered by a suburban mother whose patience was wearing thin. The conquest of Earth, he reflected, was not going well at all. Jennifer Johnson stood in the playroom doorway, hands on her hips, surveying the chaos. Mr. Pickles sat next to his water bowl looking guilty, which was his default expression. Several tiny metallic objects were floating in the water. More were scattered across the floor, and one of them, she was now certain, had just moved on its own. "Okay," she said slowly. "Either I need more coffee or Emma found something very weird in the backyard." She knelt down, reaching for one of the objects near the toy box. Captain Zell, realizing they were out of options, made a decision that would have gotten him court-martialed under normal circumstances. He activated his external speakers and broadcast on human audio frequencies. "Please do not vacuum us." Jennifer's hand stopped 6 inches from Zell. She blinked. She looked at the tiny metallic figure. It looked back at her with 4 microscopic arms raised in what was clearly a gesture of surrender. "Did you just talk?" she asked. "Yes," Zell said, abandoning all remaining dignity. "We are not toys. We are not bugs. We are the Kralix Dominion Strike Force, and we are very sorry for invading your planet. Please do not vacuum us." Jennifer sat back on her heels. She looked at the water bowl. She looked at the dollhouse. She looked at Mr. Pickles, who was now trying to eat a crayon. "I need Pete," she muttered, standing up. "Pete! Get up here!" 2 minutes later, Pete Johnson stood in the playroom, coffee mug in hand, staring at the tiny alien in his wife's palm. Pete was an amateur radio operator who spent his weekends trying to contact distant operators and had once picked up what he thought might be a signal from the International Space Station, but was probably just interference. This was significantly more exciting than interference. "Jennifer," he said carefully, "is that alien talking to you?" "Yes," Jennifer said. "And apparently there are more of them in the dog bowl." Pete set down his coffee mug with the slow deliberation of someone whose entire worldview was being reorganized. He activated his handheld radio scanner, the one he used for monitoring weather frequencies. And there it was, multiple signals, multiple voices, all broadcasting in the playroom. "Supreme War Commander, this is Captain Zell. We have been discovered by 2 adult native organisms. They appear to be the parental units of the juvenile, requesting permission to initiate diplomatic protocols." General Thrax's voice crackled through the Kralix comm system and simultaneously through Pete's radio scanner. "Permission granted, Captain. We are out of military options. Begin negotiations." Pete turned the radio volume up. Jennifer leaned closer, and for the next 15 minutes, humanity made first contact with an alien species in the most awkward diplomatic exchange in galactic history. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Pete said, sitting cross-legged on the playroom floor while Jennifer carefully extracted Kralix warriors from the water bowl using a slotted spoon. "You are 3 inches tall. You have conquered 47 star systems, and you came to Earth to conquer us, but then Emma picked you up." "That is an accurate summary," General Thrax admitted through the radio, his voice carrying the weight of profound military embarrassment. "We did not account for the scale differential. Our reconnaissance scans measured your structures but not your biological dimensions. It was a catastrophic intelligence failure." "You tried to invade Earth with 12 guys who are shorter than my coffee mug," Jennifer said, setting another dripping Kralix warrior on a paper towel to dry. "We have conquered species much larger than ourselves," Thrax said defensively. "Size is irrelevant when you possess superior technology and tactical doctrine, although I will concede that our tactical doctrine did not include contingencies for toddlers or domesticated quadrupeds." Emma's voice drifted from the bedroom. "Mommy, I am awake now. Where are my shiny bugs?" Everyone froze. 12 Kralix warriors, 2 human adults, 1 golden retriever. all united in the universal terror of a toddler who had woken up early from nap time and wanted her toys back. "Okay," Pete said quickly. "Here is what we are going to do. You guys clearly cannot conquer Earth, but you have technology we do not. Probably medical advances, energy systems, materials science, and we have something you need, which is not being turned into toys or eaten by a dog. So let us make a deal." "You are proposing a diplomatic alliance?" Thrax asked. "I am proposing you go home and tell everyone Earth is too dangerous to invade," Pete said. "In exchange, you share some of your technology with us, the non-weapon stuff, the useful stuff, medical scanners, efficient engines, whatever you have that makes sense at human scale. We will call it a cultural exchange program and not mention the part where you got defeated by a 3-year-old. There was a long silence from orbit. Colonel Vrynn's voice finally came through. "Supreme War Commander, analysis suggests this is our optimal outcome. We maintain our military reputation, we avoid further casualties, and we acquire data about human civilization that suggests they should be classified as a protected observation species rather than a conquest target." "A protected observation species?" Jennifer asked. "It means we tell the rest of the galaxy that Earth is under Krallick's diplomatic protection and that anyone who invades you will face the full might of the Dominion," Thrax explained. "Essentially, you become too politically complicated to attack. It is a designation we have used before for species that proved more trouble than they were worth." "Are you saying we are too annoying to conquer?" Pete asked. "I am saying that any species that produces juvenile organisms capable of defeating trained military forces through sheer, unpredictable behavior should be approached with extreme caution," Thrax said diplomatically. "Mommy," Emma called again, closer now. "I hear you talking to my bugs." "Deal," Pete said quickly. "You give us some cool technology. We do not tell anyone you got wrecked by a toddler and a golden retriever. You go home and tell scary stories about Earth. Everyone wins." "Agreed," Thrax said. "Captain Zell, prepare your team for extraction. We will provide coordinates for a neutral technology transfer site, one that does not involve juvenile organisms." Jennifer looked at the Krallick's warriors scattered across her playroom floor. Tiny, sophisticated, carrying weapons that could probably level buildings if scaled properly. Defeated by Naptime and Mr. Pickles. "One more thing," she said. "Emma is going to be heartbroken if all her shiny bugs disappear. Can you leave one of your ships? With a volunteer crew? Nothing that actually works as a weapon. Just enough that she can keep one as a toy." Captain Zell looked at his strike team, specifically at Corporal Jin, who was still covered in dog saliva and had pieces of Play-Doh stuck to his armor. "Corporal," Zell said, "how would you like a long-term diplomatic posting to Earth?" "Will there be more tea parties?" Jin asked, his voice hollow. "Almost certainly." "Then I respectfully decline, sir." Lieutenant Karn stepped forward. "I will volunteer, Captain. Someone needs to maintain ongoing diplomatic relations with the natives. And honestly, after today, guard duty in a child's playroom sounds relaxing." 5 minutes later, Emma burst into the playroom to find her parents standing near the window. Most of her shiny bugs were gone, but one remained, sitting on her dollhouse table like it belonged there, a tiny ship with tiny crew members who waved at her. "My bugs!" Emma shrieked with joy, scooping up the ship gently. "They stayed." "Just this one, sweetie," Jennifer said. "The others had to go home, but this one wanted to stay and be your friend." Emma beamed. She carried the ship to her tea party table and carefully set it down. Lieutenant Karn, watching from the viewport, sighed the sigh of a warrior who had accepted his fate. In orbit, General Thrax watched his remaining strike team materialize on the transport pad, dripping with water, covered in glitter, traumatized but alive. He would file his mission report as a diplomatic reconnaissance that established Earth as a protected observation species. He would not mention the tea party. He would definitely not mention Mr. Pickles. "Set course for home," Thrax ordered. "And update the Galactic database. Earth is classified as a Level 9 threat." "Level 9, sir?" Colonel Vrynn asked. "That is the same classification as the Zorthan warlords who destroyed 3 battle fleets." "Yes," Thrax said. "Because the Zorthan warlords, at least, fight according to predictable military doctrine. The humans have toddlers, and those are far more terrifying than any weapon we have ever encountered." The Krallick's fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. On the planet below, Emma was having another tea party. Lieutenant Karn was learning to say please and thank you. Pete was already drawing up plans for the technology exchange, and Mr. Pickles had found a tennis ball and forgotten the entire incident. Humanity had survived its first alien invasion, not through weapons or tactics or military might, but through the sheer chaotic power of a 3-year-old who thought space marines were shiny bugs and treated them accordingly. And somewhere in the Galactic database, Earth's entry was updated. Avoid at all costs. Natives are unpredictable, resilient, and keep creatures of mass destruction as pets. Dominant juvenile organisms are especially dangerous. Do not engage, do not invade, do not even visit unless absolutely necessary. The tiny warrior race had conquered 47 star systems, but they would never, ever return to Earth. Some victories, they had learned, were simply not worth the trauma.